My name's Frances. I work for Code for America. I'm the Interim Director of Communications and Engagement. This is my colleague, Jack. Do you want to introduce yourself, Jack?
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm the product... Come on in. We're just getting started in here. I am the Product Growth Manager at Code for America and had the privilege of helping Frances manage the Alpha Redesign Bootcamp.
Mm-hmm. So we're here today to talk about a thing we trialed for the first time this year, doing a series of workshops with some willing victims from a few cities. But first of all, I just want to introduce what DFD stands for. DFD stands for the Digital Front Door, which is an initiative that both, I believe, Livy and Karen mentioned on the main stage this morning. And we're focused around kind of the nuts and bolts of improving digital service delivery. What does it take to have a municipal website that works well for all the people in your constituency? How can we be inclusive and accessible? And why do we focus on the digital? Well, we focus on the digital because, as again, you heard this morning, increasingly people expect to find their services online at all hours of the day and night through various devices. Am I getting crossover from a radio network? That's interesting. And we've got Pew statistics that are backing us up, and the trend is looking like, as we go forward, people will expect more and more to not have to come into City Hall to do what they need to do. So we thought it would be fun to see if we could start embedding some of these skills that we've been discovering and working on over the year in the cities that we work with. Because we heard that, people are really keen to sort of level up some of their skills. I'm going to nod to Jack in a second, but he's text messaging, which is extremely rude.
There's an app that's down and I'm troubleshooting.
This is the life of having digital services, of course, is keeping the damn things up. So let's move on to the Alpha Redesign Bootcamp. Would you like to introduce our wonderful, wonderful cities?
Well, I'm going to talk for a little bit about the structure of the bootcamp and the kind of the experience that we're going to be sharing with you a little bit today. And then we're going to invite 3 of our fantastic bootcamp participants up, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion. Hopefully, it can turn into a little bit of a group discussion about the nature of your city website. Who here manages a city or touches a city government website?
Or a county. A county's fine too.
Excellent. So it's about half of you guys. So that means that you're going to get some of the help of the other audience members when we do our little exercise in the last 15 minutes, which is going to be very exciting. So this Alpha Redesign Bootcamp was really coming out of a need to test some of our assumptions about what makes a great city website. And we had an assumption that we could let web teams be a lot more flexible with what they were trying if we let them build alphas. What is an alpha website? Basically, it's a oftentimes disposable experiment to test your assumptions and to get user feedback. And something you're going to iterate on when you get to beta. And so we started recruiting different governments that were about to undergo a city website redesign, and whether that's going to be over the next 3 months or the next 6 months or the next year, thinking that this alpha creation process could be a really valuable way to test a few different practices in the way that we approach both migration and design and redoing information architecture, et cetera, all the wonderful things that go into a redesign process that end up sometimes blowing up in the middle of that redesign process. So in making an alpha, we could kind of figure out a few of those potholes early, be able to kind of have some service area engagement with some of the departments that they were working with, and different practices they could just start inculcating on their web team before that went live. And so here are our 3 pieces of verbiage. One was to learn by doing. 2 was and that's building the alpha, sharpening digital skills when in relationship both to analytics and a few of the tools that are available when we were thinking about writing for the web and writing accessibly. And finally, is to show the world. This is the world. You guys are the world. We're going to show you some of the things we did here. So how does the bootcamp work? And just to get a little bit meta here is I think one of the things we're trying to figure out at the entire summit is how do we all work together when we leave here? And this was one of the core things we were testing with the bootcamp, which is how do we collaborate as cities in different contexts? And so we had a weekly workshop that was an hour and a half long on Blue Jeans, which is basically like a different version of Google Hangouts. And we had a speaker, and we would have some applied work in that session where we'd get to kind of go over big themes as well as make progress on a few of the pieces of homework that we had. We were trying not to call it homework at the beginning, but then we just ended up calling it homework anyways. It's not to say that anyone in the bootcamp was juvenile by any means. We had a course Tumblr where we posted a lot of resources. What, you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say you were the juvenile in the group.
Yes, thank you. We have a course Tumblr where we kind of keep all these resources that actually, given that I'm showing this to you now, you guys can totally check out. There's a ton of really awesome, the entire A Book Apart series, for instance, which if any of you guys know that, is a fantastic introduction to a lot of people who are doing web work should read. Finally, weekly milestones. So like breaking it up over 10 weeks to have different deliverables that would model how a practice would be included in your alpha, but then also starting to think about how that practice extend to your entire site-wide redesign. Content, so step-by-step guides. Cannot say enough about learning we had about just kind of being able to break down some of this work and demystify, how to work with analytics, for instance, or how to do a content audit was really important. Finally, is Chime. So we have a beta of an alpha of a content management system that we've been working on at Code for America that we also wanted to get some test user interaction on and see if some of our assumptions about the way that our bootcamp members would be using or what they would want to get out of a CMS were correct. And finally, we had Slack and office hours to do other work, as well as a care package, which was my favorite part. Let's go to the care package real quick. So this was the care package. A number of different tools. And so we talk a lot about toolkits in this space. They're often just like online manuals. This was an actual toolkit that we sent people. And it has a few of the tools that we think are key to doing a modern day web work. One, again, part of this Book Apart series, some Post-its, of course. Orlando made fun of our Post-it notes on our wall at one point.
We appreciated that.
Some swag, and as well as one of my favorite things is here's open in case of user testing. And so we sent them 3 $20 Visa gift certificates to use when they are doing in-depth research interviews with users, aka residents. People feel a lot better when they're being compensated for their time and are willing to tell you a lot more. So that was exciting. Let's go back here for a second. And here was our week overview.
I would say we veered off this a little bit as we went along.
I would say we veered off it a little bit. Can I ask you guys, what here looks the most interesting to you? Like what kind of stands out as the biggest need that we see on web teams? Anybody?
Okay, it must mean that all of you have no problems and none of this resonates in any way. Week 3? Week 3, yeah. Mm-hmm. That sounds about right.
That was really important. Cool. I was just curious. So this is an example of a few of the worksheets we made, which we're going to be making available on the DFD page, because really we'd love to see as many web teams as possible out there doing this work. And finally, our favorite thing that we found that already exists actually is a thing called the Hemingway App. And the reason why it's called Hemingway is because it helps you write clearly and tersely, just like Hemingway. And what's really cool about this is you toggle from write to edit, and it will start giving you feedback about the complexity and accessibility of your words. And it turns into kind of a game where you want to make your work as accessible as possible to get rid of this pesky highlighting. So, and that was one thing that, this is available for anyone to use, and it's a shame that more people don't use things like this and get their work to a reading level that accommodates most American people. So, with the, this was an exciting place the posters went. I had to take this picture on site, but also an exciting, way to spread these messages throughout City Hall, because the web team is a very cool little animal inside City Hall in that it works with laterally across almost every city every city department. So, may I invite our panel up, please?
That's you guys.
That's you guys.
Give them a round of applause. Yeah. Back so you can see these guys.
Yes. So I'm going to ask you guys we should give them. Oh, there's a mic behind you. Yep.
Pass that around.
Yep.
Let's do this.
You can take
You're handheld? Yeah.
Yep.
And we'll give
Cool.
you the wired.
Excellent.
Yeah, you can pass that mic. And we'll give you a wired mic. Oh, you can be rock it out. There you go.
Rock it out, yes. I've never seen Francis do that.
It's not going to happen.
So, we're going to ask a few questions, and then we'd love for you guys to ask a couple of questions before we get to our group activity. What? Yes. Well, I'm actually going to ask them to introduce themselves. And so, what we'd love to hear, Natalie, you're going first. We'd love to hear is just describe your name, title, and role in the city. How you're considering, what process are you at in redesigning or potentially redesigning, and what did you want to get out of the alpha? And so, what was your alpha, and what was the most important thing that you got out of it? Is that a lot to remember? So, name. Process.
I was going to say, I'm not going to remember all of that. So hold on, let's do this in parts. So my name's Natalie. I'm the web applications developer at the City of Orlando. My main function is maintaining, developing, and updating 8 current websites for the city. I'm actually going back home after this and developing 2 more because apparently that's what I do now. There's just a little other things, but I'm also, I was heavily involved in the content audits in our first redesign, which actually took us from with PDFs, 100,000 pages down to about 1,000. So we're actually, thanks to
it's heroic work, ladies and gentlemen, for the American people.
And so our next step is to go even smaller than that and take what we've learned from the boot camp. Okay, so what was the other part?
What did you do with your alpha? And what was the most important thing you guys took away from the bootcamp experience?
So we decided to focus on residential permitting because that is an absolute nightmare. I'm sure in any city, people are always confused, do I need a permit? And that was the biggest question that we found was you don't even know if you need a permit or not. So,
by the way, we're looking at your old permitting site right behind you.
That's current, unfortunately. But so through the alpha, we were able to show everyone involved that how important users are, and you have to focus on what they need and not what the city needs to find, and not just create a website that's a dumping ground for forms, because you can put every form up on the website, but no one knows what to do with those forms. So through our boot camp, we basically found that process, and we're able to talk to the people that actually have to use these services.
I'll show a little bit about what we did.
Yes, you probably need a permit.
One of my favorite things here is, do I need a permit is the question here below this thing.
That's the updated one.
Did he? Is this not the updated one?
Oh, that's my bad. I'm sorry, Natalie.
Can you? So I want to get back to the username thing, but I would like Eric to introduce himself and where you guys started your design process and describe the alpha and what you guys got from bootcamp.
All right, I'll see what I can do. My name is Eric Schwartz, and I work with the city of Lexington, Kentucky. I was a Code for America fellow there last year, and then at the end of that year, I joined up as a consultant and worked with the wonderful Aldona Valicenti over in the corner there, which is our CIO. And let's see, so my role this year, a lot of it, the big project is to replatform, redesign, rewrite a lot of the content for the website, and so that's what I've been working on. For the alpha, we chose how to start a business. It was a important part of any city, obviously, and so we wanted to make a guide for the kind of make that process a little bit more transparent. Where else?
Yep.
Yeah.
What would you say is one of the most important things you got out of the alpha?
It was great. It was a great excuse to get a few of the people together in the city who had worked on the website over the years and kind of recast the role of, experimentation from being something that was maybe, unhelpful and unserious to being like the most helpful, most serious thing that you can do. So you're all of a sudden you just arrive at such better conclusions about what's useful to people in the city. It was really helpful that way, and I think it felt that way for me and for a lot of other people who have worked on the site over the years.
Excellent, thank you. Chantrice.
My name is Chantrice Banks, and I'm Web Content Manager with the City of New Orleans. For our alpha, we chose our police department, NOPD. We chose them because they are one of the most visited parts of NOLA.gov. They're probably like the 3rd most popular page after the homepage, something like that. And so we have a lot of great people who work in that department, but they're not writers, they're police officers. And so they're really good about getting stuff out there when it needs to be out there, but they don't think about organizing it or how users are gonna find it or even who the users are. And so we thought they would be good to use for the alpha process.
I would say, what are you taking away that you're going to take into your redesign process?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I'm going to take away from this is just really thinking about who our users are and what their needs are. So not just, the police department site, everybody needs it. Everybody is going to need that site at some point in life. But really, if you don't speak English, how can you use this site? If you have disabilities, how can you use this site? Like making sure that really everybody has equal access to using this site. Oh, and our CIO is here too. Hey, Lamar.
Hello, Lamar.
Welcome.
2 CIOs in the audience here.
Amazing.
Excellent.
Is there any more hiding in the back there? No. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So I think we're going to try and have a little bit of a discussion now, and you all in here can jump in. But let's start with something gritty. So I think we could probably all agree that your original websites had some issues, and you were keen to change them. So what do you think were the main barriers you had in your way to doing those sorts of changes? Is there a reason you didn't do them sooner? Is there bureaucratic processes in the way that make you feel like you can't make these small changes that you tried out in the alpha?
Could I add on to that?
Of course you can.
So maybe start by also clarifying, we don't all have a shared vision of exactly what a city website should be.
Of course.
And so what would be what is your guys' vision for the city website? And what's the biggest barrier towards accomplishing it? I hopefully our CIO friends in the audience can allow our panelists a cone of silence.
This is a safe space. Yes. Safe space.
I think with us, it was mostly that our departments are very siloed. There's not a lot of collaboration going on most of the time. And there's a very me versus you mentality. I'm a web app developer, but I'm in the communications department. I'm not anywhere in IT. Mm-hmm. And IT knows nothing about our website. They actually just bought into a huge software thing that is not responsive. And I looked at them and I'm like, our mobile users, it's 47% of people online are mobile, and you just bought something that's, I'm not even gonna say how much, and it's not responsive. So there's that.
You don't have to I don't know if somebody else would like to jump in.
And so the vision would be mobile responsiveness across
definitely
the website.
And just like I mentioned before, they're all about, well, this is the city thing, so we're going to put it on there. We're going to put the mission statement. We're going to put the pictures on there. And it's like, it's not about the services that we're actually providing.
Mm-hmm. Let's hear from each of you guys.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. One of the challenges, they're similar, definitely a lot of those structural things. But even thinking about some of the challenges of building in this sort of user-centered way is that, I think the ask is kind of unintuitive, where you ask, saying people, we want you to care so much about this that you recruit people to actively criticize your work to your face. It's just like, I think it's unintuitive. It's just not what we normally want to do. So it's really healthy and helpful to go through this process to get some of that skill under our belt, and will help us get to a place where that's more normal and feels a little bit better.
I think the biggest barrier for us was just the fact that our police department, they are police officers again, so they're out in the field, and their focus is somewhere totally different than where ours is. And so we found out that a lot of our officers and even higher ranking lieutenants had not even been to the site in a very long time. Mm-hmm. So they couldn't tell us what was there, what wasn't there. So they didn't really have a lot of input as far as what should or shouldn't be there, just that their site was up and something was there. So. Mm-hmm.
The other question I had is, as we've done this research and learning about a lot of the context that web teams have to work within, they often find that their content contributors might not be as attentive to the content on the website as they maybe should be, and that is partially because we see from the top that department heads don't necessarily attach goals to the website. As you said, if it's up, it's there. And so I'm curious of what are some tactics that you guys have found, both either through the bootcamp or through your normal work, that have helped you kind of make content contributors aware of the power of the city website, to help them with the increase, the amount of service they're able to give residents, but also just to make their content written for the web and accessible.
I think for us, getting the numbers out in front of people was a really great first step. I mean, just the the number of unique visitors was a surprising. I think for a lot of some of that information was kind of stored up in IT for the most part, and I think once we were able to share that with the people who deal with who are contributors, they were surprised and impressed in many cases at how much this matters to people in the city. So that was a great first step towards thinking about improving it and how many people will be affected by those improvements.
Same thing. Analytics were really important. What they thought was important, we show that no one cared, and they're like, oh. So it's like you got to change your strategy. But the other thing too is we're in the middle of content audits, but we're showing how the information on your part of the website, how it affects another part of the website. I don't think people realize, like, hey, if Parks is having an event, it's probably going to be posted on 5 different parts of the website because 5 different parts of the city are involved in this event. So maybe 5 different posts don't have to be made. Maybe you can just link to it or have some sort of news feed going on your website. So that's been a big eye opener for a lot of our web authors.
Do you have anything to add, Trace?
On top of our Google Analytics, we also use a third-party tool called Site Improve. And so it crawls our site every 5 days to find misspelled words and broken links. And so when we initially introduced it, we did it in front of, we had like a little web, not meeting, but like a networking event. We got everybody together to get them all excited about this product that we had. And we put up in front of everybody, whoever was willing to put their numbers up in front of everybody. These are your broken links, these are your misspelled words. And so the people that had 0 were really excited about it. And so the people that didn't, they kind of, but it kind of became like a little fun competition unfortunately, it didn't last. It lasted about a month and they were kind of over that. So you kind of have to keep it fresh and thinking of new things to keep them interested.
Yeah, it's a really good tip, actually. I don't know if anyone else has similar tips. Like, how do you keep the non-webby people engaged? Or
you have to be really, 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 really annoying. You have to check in with them. There's no other way. You have to show that you care. I think I talked to Jack about this before. You have to be sort of their mediator, their therapist, because a lot of them got dumped on their desk. They're not happy. They don't like their job. And you have to sit there, listen to their problems, and help them figure it out. And if they know that you're there to help them, they're more willing to talk to you, and they're more willing to reach out to you when there is an issue.
Yeah, actually, that was something that I think that's a great point. We've had a panel of our content contributors weekly for the last basically the last 10, 12 weeks, which has just been great because I think it's just enabled a lot of camaraderie around the similar challenges that people face. And then, kind of fun ideas that people will be able to throw each other about, being slightly outside of your department. Here's some idea that I see you could use. And in that sort of safe space kind of idea, people were pretty receptive to those ideas, and it was good information sharing, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. The last thing I was going to ask about, and then we can open this up a little bit for questions for all of us, is your experience in the user research process and watching users use the website. I was curious if there's any anecdotes or stories that have resonated with you in terms of your understanding of how users are kind of moving about the site, or that kind of that you would have been imparting to others, or just really meaningful for you.
One thing that stood out to me was the subtle things that you would never guess when you're writing the content. During this process for starting a business, there's an email address we put up that was a help. If you have questions, if you need help, email this address. And the email address, I think, was like building-inspections@lexingtonky.gov. And we just invented that email address. It didn't actually exist, but we just kind of put it up because we were this is a placeholder. It would be something like this if you needed help. And come to find out that someone started to read that, and they were really off put by the notion that they would have an inspection associated with starting a business, when it's actually just the department. They're not having a building inspection. That's just the department it would go to. There was no inspection involved. But something like that was just subtle. You're inside the government. You wouldn't think about the fact that someone might interpret that tiny, subtle little email address as something that implied something more kind of onerous.
I'm thinking back to the first exercise of watching just a random friend or family member kind of using the city website. Is there anything that comes to mind?
We had a good one. We had one of our interns sit down, and he couldn't find either thing I asked him to look for, and he didn't even notice we had a search bar. So it was just really interesting. It's like you assume that because the search bar is just this thing now in life, and there you have a college-age kid not even see it. So you can't assume anything.
The importance of information architecture. Anything comes to mind?
Yeah, so when we first did our user testing or observations, I had my mom and our office intern. My mom was going all over the place. She was just, why is this here? And who is this person? And why don't y'all have this? And she's very involved in the neighborhood association. So she was like, y'all need to have, I need to know where the cars are in my neighborhood and all types of things that we just don't have the capacity to do right now. All really good things. But she just wanted crazy stuff. And our intern, his process for finding things was completely different. He actually, most people I would think would use our search bar or maybe even Google what they were looking for, but he was finding things in the footer, strangely enough. And I don't even go down there. I don't think anybody did, but he was finding things down there. So
that's great.
Just as an adjoinder to this, one thing we found is that the more that not just the web team can have these insights about the way that people are actually using the sites, but the more we're bringing along department partners and those content contributors and letting them have the insights and letting them be really smart about the way that people are using the websites, the better. Do you want to talk about some of our cards here that we've created as a result of the Bootcamp?
Yeah. So this is a slight aside. So I think the thing we learned, since we're part of the Bootcamp experience too, I think, is how much the city websites we're working with rely on really good content. So we started making these little tip cards on how to better improve content based on the things that you guys were doing. So we have these little cards and we'll hand them out in a minute.
You guys can take some.
But it seemed like that was I don't know, I'm curious to know if you would agree, content writing seems like pretty much the biggest deal in many ways. I don't know how everyone else feels, but it feels like the big deal. If you can get the words right, that's most of the way. I don't know how you guys found content writing with us, whether it was different to how you may have approached it before or things you might do differently in the future. I'm sort of curious to know how you guys feel about it and whether that resonates with you.
The writing
too.
For the web piece and
when we work with Erin and folks from Philly who are here somewhere. So I'm just curious to know if you felt like that was a main area of difficulty and responsibility for what you're doing on the website.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it was a main. It was a main area. I guess the next step to that is just teaching that to our content editors.
Yeah, exactly.
Since they are going to be the ones who are editing most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question about it.
Yeah.
It's challenging. Yeah, I mean, good content takes a ton of effort. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things we still don't totally understand is how to have the user feedback mechanisms flow to all of the content contributors, since they're such a vital part of it. I think we're still trying to figure that out. And some of that's just trying to pull them along and come out to a session or two with people who use their content. But we'll have to experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, content is key to anything. But kind of the opposite is through the Bootcamp, I realized that we have to take the reins in a little bit more in our department, because we just sort of put it out there. They're like, you're the expert, you write about it, but then we're like, yeah, but you don't really know what the user is looking for.
Exactly.
And making it concise, and they use too much city hall jargon. So.
Yeah.
We find over and over again, both in the fellowship and in this work, that the user is kind of like an unbiased third party who's they don't have an axe to grind. They're just trying to get something done. And so when you kind of expose that experience, and it's not just us saying, wow, this content really sucks, or I can't read this, and who wrote this? It's saying they don't understand it. And as a result, no one's the bad guy. You guys are both on the same team to try and improve the accessibility. The second thing I'll note here about content is one of the significant findings we have is that you don't necessarily need to start with apps. Is that in rewriting the content of the site is something that anybody can do. in terms of making it more readable, making it more adherent to a grade level that meets all of your residents' needs.
Keeping it short and very actionable.
Yeah. Before you get to apps, publishing is really key.
Do you want to open it up, or do you want me to read them?
I want to see these.
You want to read them? You want me to read them?
I want to tell them how we arrived at these.
How do we arrive at these? Oh no. I mean, I think these were the things that we felt like we were saying over and over again. We heard Erin Abler saying over and over again. My friends back in the UK, they were saying these things over and over again. And they're not complex. They're things like, limit to one idea per page, which apparently, is this very simple trick, but works. Improve your writing by reading it aloud. I quite like write so an 8th grader can understand. I don't know if this is across the entire United States, but many states are legislated to make your content understandable by an 8th grader or below for some key content. So it's really simple interventions that have a huge effect. So this is, this is now where we feel we have hit sort of some deep vein that we now want to go and discover more of, I think.
So come get some cards. You can give them out to all of your website contributors. I just want to open this up a little bit, and feel free either to ask questions about the Bootcamp, about Digital Front Door, or about bring your own experience or challenge that you're currently having with your city website. Maybe we can talk a little bit about it. The more disclosing,
I see hands going up already. Fantastic. Pass that over.
Yeah.
And then you can hold that from it.
I was curious about people filling out forms, and I've been experimenting with just kind of animated GIFs of how to do a flow or kind of like a video. And I was curious if you had any experience with that. And then a tangential follow-up question: did you go from 100,000 down to 1,000?
Pages and PDFs, so it's not just pages, but to 1,000. Now we're back up to like 2,000, but still.
And how did you? How did you do that to some extent? But also just if you've used kind of videos or just any process like that, and if it has any value. I haven't experimented with it.
I haven't.
No, I'd be really curious though. Yeah, those little animated GIFs that are like a short 5-minute video almost, or a 5-second. Yeah. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I've seen some really great examples of people doing that in the private sector, so I don't see why it wouldn't scale out, not scale out's the wrong word, wouldn't translate. I'm trying to think, I think Slack, for example, has a great onboarding which uses GIFs. It's like, it's actually showing the behavior rather than just talking about it, which is a bit abstract, because click is very difficult to explain.
As a user though, because I remember one of our presentations during the boot camp, someone had done that, and there was too much going on in the GIF, and I was like, crap, I have to sit through this again. Follow it through, because there's no stop or start thing to it. So that's the only thing I'll tell you, keep them short. Short, and be careful about strobing effects or anything like that.
How did you go from 1,000 to? How did you go from 100,000 to 1,000?
Very carefully. We basically started a steering committee, so we invited top level people and said, look, this is too much. This is an important tool. And people aren't finding what they need. We need to cut this down. They took that to their departments and said, start going through your content and start cutting. At that point, not much was being done. So I think there was about 5 of us in our department. We took a handful of departments each, and then one-on-one went to each department and said, this is too much. What doesn't need to be in a PDF? What information, like emissions, really, do you need the emission statement? I don't think so. It was sort of, the precursor was, as I had actually, before the website redesign, I had done our internal intranet. So some of the departments had already been thinking about some of this content auditing that we ended up doing, because I kind of forced them on a smaller scale to start rethinking how they were building stuff out.
Was there a lot of redundancy across departments? Sorry.
Oh.
Was there a lot of redundancy across departments in terms of content? Or
yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of redundancy.
One last thing, how long did that take?
The whole process probably took over a year.
Wow. Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the one thing, 2 things I'll add here is what's interesting, I find, and a little bit of a anti-pattern in government website redesigns, is that we'll actually pay someone to write migration scripts for all of the content on the current site to get to the new site. Mm-hmm. And so this has boggled my mind, and I tried to create a metaphor to try and explain this to myself. or ask folks what they were thinking, is it's kind of like buying a new house. And what you're doing is you're paying a very, very, very expensive moving company to take everything in your old house, like everything, including everything, like everything like that's like 6 months old in your refrigerator, and all the dirt on the top of like the walls, and to move it and put it exactly in your new house, exactly the way it was. And that is a lot what hiring someone to write scripts to edit to bring over your content is like. Yes. I see a burning question in the back. Oh, we need a mic.
I will dash that way.
Do you have another metaphor?
So I have a question that deals exactly with that. So what our IT department did in migrating, we're redesigning, and migrating over our website was they took our whole old website and put it on a new server, right? And moved it over to a new content management system. Well, now when you Google us, which 50% of our traffic does, they only end up on our archive site. They don't end up on the new site. So how do you fix that?
It's on a live server,
I guess. Oh my. We're not IT people. We work in communications, but.
So they kept the old site. They kept the old site, and it's still running. The old site is still running on an old content management system, and so but the IT department can't seem to figure out why that is.
And Google page ranks.
Yeah, and literally 50% of our traffic is originating in Google. It's not a direct link, so. And no one seems to find that problematic but us, obviously.
That needs to go on a server that's not connected to the internet.
I think it goes back to your point, though, what they're saying, like what you said about, they're just like, well, what if someone can't find the page? And it's like, well, no one can find anything on our website anyway. I don't know that we're really that far off.
No, and that's like a huge thing that comes up. They're like, well, what if they need it? Then they'll contact you.
Or they'll Google it. And
I was telling earlier, we had stuff on there from like 2011, 2010, and they're like, well, we need it up there. No, you don't. People can contact you if it's that old.
Well, and there should, I think there's also, they should be able to have the robots.txt file that would stop it from being crawled by Google too. But.
Right.
Write that down and send it to your IT department.
So to your thing about migrating from the current site to the new one, Ron Vasquez, City of San Diego, by the way, and that's exactly what we're doing. But it's not by choice, though, and the reason we're doing that is deadlines. Really, we're under direction that the new site has to be live by the next State of the City address, right? And your experience too, doing the whole rewrite took a year, and so it was just out of necessity that we're doing that. After we go live, we are going to go back and clean up because that's a necessity too. But I totally understand what you're saying about the craziness. I would say the foolishness of doing that. But sometimes we just don't have any choice in doing that, and that's kind of where we are with.
I want to get another reaction here too.
Well, I mean, I wanted to ask a diagnostic question about having two sites side by side at the same time. I mean, was there like if they're using the same URLs, like why not have the old site have like a redirect to the new equivalent page? Because when we set up a redirect like that and search engines find that redirect, that's actually intended as a signal to the search engine that this content has now moved to a new location. And so, but like if that's hard to do if you set that content up manually, but if there was some sort of like an automated script, then it probably should have been, at least I would recommend that part of the automated script would be to say that if you have this content and copy over to a new place, then mark the old thing, have a redirect there. But if it's not automated, then that's really
and like
order.
Doing that manually is very hard. In fact, we had to do the same thing when we migrated the content from old websites to gov.uk, which I worked on before I lived here. We had a very, very, very patient human make a manual script to do that because it's actually it's relatively tricky. Those guys are over there in the communications team, and IT sounds like they're not listening to them, which is really unfortunate. So I think they should go back and start banging down IT's door personally. Shake some fists.
You have like a laundry
But yeah, you're completely right, and that would be the healthy way to deal with that, is have proper redirects that go from the old site to the new website.
Right.
Yeah. Was there another? Did I miss one? Oh, I'm going to go all the way around to the back.
Oh, awesome.
So what research methods did you guys use prior to the alpha site to determine your user needs, or what methods are you planning to use to determine those?
So is it? I just want to clarify for the panel. This is before they were in the bootcamp. What were they doing for research?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or what do they plan to do in the future for additional research?
Oh, good. I like that question.
Thank you very much.
So we were in the process of just gathering our information at the time of the alpha. So we went and we got all of our analytics. We have a button that says "Watch this page helpful" at the bottom of each of our web pages, and so we pulled in all of that content, whether it's positive or negative. We also have a 311 database, so we pulled in all of our 311 complaints or our commendations, whatever they may be. We pulled all that together and started analyzing that. We were going to do surveys. We were going to do one-on-one interviews and probably some cord sorting as well. We were going to try and stay away from focus groups because people tend to either feed off of other people around them, or if nobody else is saying anything, then I'm not going to say anything either. So just like one-on-one, personalized, just like nothing, no pressure, just like us having a conversation. I'm not going to take anything personal, just what do you think about the website?
Yeah, we hired for our first redesign. We hired a company that did qualitative stuff, so the focus groups. We sent out quantitative surveys, and then just Google Analytics and search queries and stuff like that. But moving forward, thanks to the bootcamp, we've convinced the higher ups that we need to do more one-on-one user testing and doing a little bit more. Yeah, yes. Good thing.
And also, I just want to highlight San Diego contract with a fantastic research and design firm, and I believe we're making that document that they gave you guys available.
I believe it already is.
It's on the Bootcamp. It's on the DFD site, and you can see it's a model of what happens when you get a really qualified small design firm publishing your research. Yeah.
One second, I'll just do this. So they get the other.
And yes, the vendor that we chose did an amazing job with the community engagement part, and they produced this amazing report that we're actually using as a Bible for everything we do web related now. One of the pitfalls that we had was that our web design was based on, for a lot of reasons, political reasons, right? Departments fighting for space on our site. Through community engagement, we found that that's not what users are looking for. They want to come in, get stuff done on our site, and that's it. They don't care about elected officials. They don't care about the name of departments. They don't want to know that to pay a water bill, you have to go to public utilities for that. To them, it's a water bill, right? I have a parking citation to pay. And that's all in the report. And from that, whenever council, department heads come to us and we want to do it this way, if it goes against what it says on the community engagement report, we can tell them, no, that's not what the users want. And they totally back off.
We have a question from Luke back here that I want to get to, but I want to close up this really good back and forth we've had about the notion of migration and when do you do the migration wholesale? How do you convince people to go back and rewrite their content if you're dealing with a really hard deadline? I'm trying to ignore that we have like a powerhouse content strategist to my left here, and I can tell you that we've noticed and it would be awesome to hear your thoughts on this as well. But we've noticed that for government that yes, it comes a thing where like we want to hit the deadline, and so we're going to move it all over and we'll clean it up later. Does it happen? I don't know. Another really cool emergent pattern that we've seen is with alpha.phila.gov. You're going to see Aaron Ogle talk about this on Friday, where you start with and this is kind of like the gov.uk model, which is we're making a new website and it's different. And we're going to leave this old website over here with all the mission statements and the photos and all the PDFs. We're going to leave that over here. And we're just going to make a new site over here, and we're going to work on our own timeline around migration. And so that way you're not getting into these pitched battles. You're actually able to score wins based on what you're able to migrate over and the services you're able to migrate over. Do we have, so I'm just curious if we can ask you a question. Our colleague here in San Diego has a timeline that they need to migrate everything by the timeline because they have a political pressure to be able to declare success. How would you push back on that assumption? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can introduce myself. My name is Megan Casey. I'm a content strategist at Brain Traffic. A book that I just wrote called The Content Strategy Toolkit came out in June, and my boss, Christina Halverson, just sort of wrote the book about content strategy. That's sort of the resource for people, well, except for mine now. So I think what I would push back on from a content strategy perspective is, do you know what the strategy of the site is and what the purpose is? Because more than likely, probably 75% of that stuff doesn't need to come over. So that's why I really like the gov.uk approach, because they really thought about what specifically do people need. How can we, I mean, it's so elegant and simple. There was no ego involved in the design of that website. I mean, it is just simple and plain and straightforward and easy to use. And I would say that's what we want to do. So if you really think about what are we trying to achieve and what do the users need, think of your old content on the old website as source content, stuff that you can pull from, but don't necessarily bring it over. Just use it as a resource to create what is actually necessary. So it's almost like a library of information versus a bunch of pages that need to move over.
Yep. And the one thing I'd add here as well is that in doing a lot of this research, we found at the highest levels, and this is not something that government has a corner of the market on, but there's no goals for the city website in a lot of ways. It's either up or it's down. And so if we were actually able to create goals by department that they have for the city website, then we're actually able to see whether or not a wholesale migration is accomplishing those goals. Because I think we're all pretty much on the same page as that it does not. Also, by show of hands, I'm realizing that there might be some difference in knowledge in the room around things like gov.uk. Raise your hand if you know the gov.uk story.
Yeah, you see, they basically know it's fine. We don't.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure. I don't want to be privileged, civic type privileged here.
Yes.
Luke, you've been waiting really patiently to ask a question. Oh, by the way, are you guys cool? This is a really good conversation. We have this group exercise. What if we just like give it to you as like a parting gift of like a content audit that you could do in your own time? Like, do you guys want to do a group exercise, or do you want to continue this conversation? If you want to continue that conversation, raise your hand. Okay, all right. Continue the conversation or do the group exercise? What do you? Well, you guys get to vote too.
Oh.
Okay, cool. Let's continue the conversation. Luke.
One of my questions you addressed in the migration, and you're like the mind reader, awesome that you are. I would love to know what are the top pages, and maybe other people too, that it gets back to your comment about identifying content needs, and content can be anything, right? It's access to a payment or whatever it is. What are the top pages that people visit on your websites? And I know you guys have done some research and put this out there, but what are the top pages that people are visiting? And I wonder if there are commonalities. And the other question is what are you what are the areas that you're spending a lot of resources building content for?
It sounds like you want to like survey the government webmaster folks in the room a little bit. Sorry, webmaster is a totally old term.
This is cool again.
Web teams in the room. Is anyone willing to? Do you guys willing to take that?
Yeah. In Orlando, our top pages are police, jobs, permitting. That makes up the top 10 for the most part. What was the second part?
Second question. So you basically top pages, and what are you guys spending the most money, resources creating content for?
Sorry, I'm such a bird brain. But with us, we've actually been doing a huge push on news and actually being a content creator instead of relying on local media. So we've actually been putting a lot of effort into blogs from the mayor. Don't laugh at me. Pushing out events and stuff like that and creating pages based on our mayor's initiatives and tying that all into all the different departments on the website.
Yeah, for us, we have very similar top, and there's a couple bills that people pay as well. And then we're putting a lot of effort into, about 25% of our traffic goes to the Parks Department, and so it's a lot of events and things like that. And so we're trying to model that out in sort of database fashion where you have things tied together in a relational way, where you have a park and an event and various facilities and various amenities, and having those things all be sort of like a database style application that you can do more. Yeah, because the other piece about that is reading a lot of your books is because then it feels like you also want, the more structured your data is, the more you're able to get less technical people to contribute to the site. Because it feels more like creating an Outlook event than it is anything intimidating, just a big blank piece of page, form. So we're pushing in that direction and seeing, see how well that works for us.
Aside from the police department, our pay tickets portion of our site is very, very popular. And our resources, it just kind of depends. Recently, we built a whole new recreation site that kind of came out of nowhere, that wasn't on our calendar for the year. It's awesome, by the way. It's Nord. If you ever want to Google it and look at it, NORDC. So we just built a whole new Nord site, and it's really nice. But that's where our resources went for those 2 months, because we had to just put everything on hold and work on that site. But aside from that, we're putting a lot of time and effort into just research, our user needs and everything, so we can build the next version of Lola.gov.
Awesome. Alyssa.
Some more at the back? I'll go to the back. Hang on a second.
Then we can go, the gentleman to your left.
I'm wondering how much of, and this is going to sound horrible, but how much of crappy government websites are due to technology or due to process? Because I'm hearing we migrated a whole bunch of crappy stuff onto a new site. So do people get to interact with the crappy stuff in a better way? Or is it still, is this a tech problem or is this a process problem?
I gave a process of the two.
What, Francis, can you expound on that before we get to Natalie?
Technology is pretty easy. We've got this whole web thing down now. We have good practice for this stuff. Well, government websites are no different to any other website. It's the content on them and the processes that have decided what goes on them. That's the problem.
That's an affirmational statement, though, because we know for a fact that, for instance, City of Oakland website spends a lot of time being down.
Fair. There are definitely some situations where the technology is not great.
Yes.
Yes, 1 second. I should have.
The reason that I immediately said process and people is that we get pulled in a lot when people are like, oh, we bought this new CMS and it's amazing and awesome and everything still sucks. And so it's not the CMS. The CMS is great. Performance issues are a different thing. If it's down and not performing, that's another thing. But as far as the success of the site and whether it meets user needs and helps cities achieve their goals, it's mostly around people and process in my experience.
Closer.
Yep.
To add to that question, I'm just curious, do you find that if you engage in more user tests, and I guess this applies to you as well, does that sort of disrupt that crappy process and allow you to sort of make better decisions so people aren't,
You have the dynamite basically to take what they say to you. They're like, oh, and you're like, no, it's right there. And they can't do anything about it. I think you said that. You're like, there's my Bible. No.
Wow.
So
yeah, I agree. I think showing the thing not working is very convincing.
User research, it's not just Kool-Aid. It actually works.
You had a thing to add. Yeah.
I wanted to add on the process versus technology. I'm with Francis on process, and I think a big part of the problem is it's that classic problem that we have almost everywhere, where almost everybody who has an opinion thinks they're an expert or that they know more than the actual experts who do the hard work of doing stuff, which is hysterical given that that's the main problem with politics and voting and all those things that determine the people we work for in the end anyway. But yeah, it's this issue, and I totally agree that I wish that we had the kind of, at my office, that we had the kind of research that your office has, because I need that dynamite. So I want to second that.
Yeah, we don't always have it. But I was going to say both, but I do agree that it's the process. But at the same time, there is technology out there that really sucks, and unfortunately, because of the process, it gets brought on to government. So.
Just a little different question. Going back to content, I was wondering in the Alpha Bootcamp, if anybody in the Alpha Camp considered doing a write-a-thon for as far as content to get through a lot of content and include people, maybe your end users, to help write the content. So bring in public over a weekend to rewrite stuff. I know that's been done for other organizations. Did you consider that? Try it?
If you put thon on the end of it, it sounds more fun.
We didn't, but we'll do a consider-a-thon soon to consider it.
Sing-a-thon.
Oh!
Wait, that's just karaoke, isn't it? Yeah.
I was curious, the Small Business Administration had a thing for trying to get business permits. They had a contest and grants. I was interested if you guys were able to see metric improvements when you improved the residential permitting and the business permitting, if you had metrics on how many people applied or made it through the process, if the content did have an impact on that.
Ours right now is we're still doing sort of manual user testing on it, so it's not open to the point where lots of people are going through it.
It's a difficulty of the alpha model that we can't make it the live site because it would look like totally ridiculous and out of sync and stuff.
You also need to get statistical significance with data.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that.
And to your question, I'm remiss that Christina Tejada from the city of Fontana is not here because she runs a monthly webathon, and that's all about trying to create a culture around the website and around editing and keeping the content fresh on the website. And so we are seeing places where web teams are kind of like slowly converting folks more and more to kind of feeling like they are a dotted line to the web team. We have a bunch of comments I want to do quickly. Yeah,
I just had
Lamar hasn't gotten a chance to speak yet, so let's give him a chance.
I just had a quick question on your alpha site.
Please.
You know how it's like alpha.philly.com or .gov or whatever. So is it the same? Is it a different URL? Obviously, it's a different URL than the main site. Will it eventually all become the same URL for marketing purposes once everything migrates over?
Yes, that is like basically Aaron Ogle's Jubilee Day,
Right.
when alpha.phila.gov becomes the real phila.gov.
So how do people know which site to go to when, like, if you need these 3 things, it's on alpha. If you need these 3 things, it's on the regular. Like, how do you direct people to the right site?
It's a similar work around redirecting. That folks
so
had
they may not
mentioned
even know they're on alpha.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Today, right now, they're doing some like targeted outreach. So taking out doing things like Google Ads, et cetera, that like drive people to that process. He's going to talk about this again on Friday, so you should definitely catch that talk.
I have a question about design. So I just kind of recently learned about A/B testing in design, where you have one version of the site and you're trying to figure out how to make maybe a search bar more useful. So you offer a second version and you randomly offer it to people and kind of test which one is most effective. Is that just something that sounds like a good idea, or is it something that actually works? Or is it too time intensive to actually make useful throughout the site? Or just what do you guys think about that?
So Francis is going to answer this question.
Am I? Okay. The thing with A/B or multivariate testing is you need a large volume of traffic to make it effective. And for a very small city, that might be very difficult, and even more difficult on something like an alpha, where maybe you've only got 50s, hundreds of people coming. You need thousands of people doing something to get a statistically valid result. So I think it's useful on a live website, perhaps. I would probably lean further towards doing proper user testing with actual human beings on doing 1, 10, 20 people on something more focused than doing A/B testing. I don't think most people are able to get the data they need for that to really, really work. Surveys are interesting. That might be another way to do it.
As someone that asked the same question 6 months ago, I've since kind of learned that A/B testing is more of like knob turning on the city website, when kind of what needs to happen is you are again like moving house. You are like constructing this new thing.
It's the kind of thing Google can do easily. Like they can change their buttons to blue and see what happens for half their traffic, and that's statistically significant. But we don't generally see that kind of numbers. So.
That'd be helpful for content too.
Yeah, that might be helpful for content. Yeah.
You still would want to. Sorry. It can also be helpful for content, but again, I agree with Francis that you'd want larger volume, but you can maybe test 2 different calls to action about applying, or maybe for a permit or something, or maybe the placement of those, and see what works the best. But again, high volume.
I believe we're out of time, so I think we should wrap up. Jack?
Share out the link to the page. C4A.me/DFD, and there you can find a lot of the resources we've been talking about. A few of the things that we have that are really important. One is, in Oakland, during our phase 1 research, we created a resident website survey that started getting a baseline understanding of how people even use the website. So for user research, we're talking about very specific user needs, but what can be really helpful towards getting the buy-in that people need is to understand what people are using it for, where the holes are, and making that survey representative of your community is really important work. And so we have that on the website, as well as the top 10 ranked pages research that we did for all city websites. as well as what else is on there that's really worthwhile. Right, and the San Diego Research and Design again, which is like, I think best in class. It's been done so far. This feels unfinished, like our city websites. And the other thing I want to invite you guys to is when you go to that site, you'll also find a link to a Google group that you can join and where we can continue this conversation. But thank you so much for being open to being interactive, and thank you to our panelists. Give them a round of a hand.